if you want to make your way up here, I'm going to introduce you to the best of my ability. Back in 1991, Mr. Payne started a firm called Wall Street Strategies with 10 grand. How cool is that? Is that right? 10,000 bucks. He starts Wall Street Strategies, and he's basically giving people advice on where to put your money, how to make investments, and all that stuff. And by the way, I think everybody thinks they're an expert on the stock market and religion, right? Like we all think I told my best friends about 8 months ago, and a few are here, that they should sell their house and buy Peloton at 120 bucks.
Because you like your Peloton.
Because I like my Peloton. And he, Mr. Payne, has grown that list of people that are subscribing to that service to 120,000 over, I think it's 60 countries that are looking to tune in and find out what he says and what he thinks. And as a result of that, many of you guys know Mr. Payne at 2 o'clock on Fox Business. And you're either watching Fox Business, Bloomberg, or CNBC, right? Right. And there's a lot of commentators, and Charles has stood out as one of the leaders there. He's constantly in Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Reuters. He's written 2 books, one in 2007 called Act Fast, Be Smart, and Get Rich, which is a pretty cool title to a book. Did you come up with that title, or was that your PR firm?
No, the PR firm came up with that.
That was pretty good.
I thought it was pretty, I was a little nervous about that one.
Yeah, that's a bold.
Yeah. I wanted to say maybe get rich, but they said, no, go with get rich. I said, yeah.
And you're in the first page, you were like, go buy yourself some Peloton. And then in 2019, which is a few years ago.
It was Nautilus back then, but yeah.
Yeah, there we go. He wrote a book called Unstoppable Prosperity, and where this began. I think it was at the age of 14. By the way, Paul, that's the book right there. At the age of 14, he said to his mom, I want to work on Wall Street. And it happened. And the road to get there and to be here in front of us has been long and winding, and it's a pretty cool story. I definitely read the book. He started out in the Air Force. Anybody here ever serve in the Air Force? One person? 2? Go Falcons, right? And then, by the way, I'm going to name this college, and I'm going to give $100 to anybody that can name the mascot to Minot College in North Dakota. Does anybody know? Minot, correct?
Yeah.
Go Beavers, right? And
why not Minot?
Yep.
Freezing's the reason, yeah.
And there you go. And he also went to Central Texas College, and through all these really cool journeys and adventures, he's come here. And I think it's really cool. He's in Fort Lauderdale, and what I believe to be one of the great secret kind of like hidden industries, and I would love it. It would mean the world to me if you guys like gave him the kind of welcome where he went on the plane and just told everybody how awesome we were. So could you please freaking clap as loud as you freaking can for Charles Payne?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Is this on? Yeah. So, let me make sure this clicker thing, is it? Okay. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the turnout and everyone. It's been fascinating just to sit here and watch. I've owned Marine Max stock in the past. I'm waiting for it to live up to the hype. Honestly, though, I always think it's perpetually undervalued stock. Be that as it may, yeah, I have a show on Fox Business called Making Money with Charles Payne. I also have my own research firm, Wall Street Strategies, that I started over 3 decades ago. And yeah, I told my mom when I was 14 I was going to work on Wall Street because I grew up initially as a kid as an Army brat. So my dad was in the military, he was in the Army, and we moved every year. So I was born in New York, Pittsburgh, Texas, Germany, Pittsburgh, Japan, Texas, Alabama, Virginia, North Carolina. And in North Carolina, it was a beautiful life, 2-story house, didn't lock the doors, went outside, rode bikes, played all day, came home, made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, went back out, played all day. And then one day I came home from school, my mom said, we're leaving. So me, my mom, and my 2 younger brothers got on a bus from Fort Lee, Virginia, our 2-story house, penniless, and we went to Harlem, which at the time was the poorest, most dangerous neighborhood in America. And because I was the oldest, I was sort of thrust into this responsibility of taking care of the family. And it was an eye-opening experience. First and foremost, it was a combination of things, right? The excitement. The first day walking down the block, I mean, just the music, it was so amazing. It was coming out of windows, out of cars, out of boom boxes. I mean, songs I never heard before in the Army base. Like, who the hell is Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes? I'm digging this, right? And that energy, I never saw girls double Dutch. So I'm watching girls double Dutch, and it's just so amazing. So that part of it was just phenomenal, but I'd never seen that kind of poverty or violence. I mean, I had a couple of fights growing up as a kid, but you know, my neighborhood, like, you fought to the death. Everything was a fight to the death. And it was just so much every single day, and people being shot and murdered. And so it was a tough thing, but the poverty was the toughest, you know, and I was really naive. We finally got our first, initially all four of us lived inside of a room, inside of an apartment. We eventually got our own apartment, and the first winter we had no heat or hot water. So, you know, growing up in Army bases, you know, you turn on the H and hot water comes out. So I was the oldest. I started hustling. I got paper towels, and I would clean windows, windshields at stoplights, and I would volunteer to shovel snow. I got a job at a bodega. And I just, as anybody else, I equated money with Wall Street. So I decided I got to learn. I got to make some money. I never thought about money my entire life, so I started reading the Wall Street Journal, which back then, if anybody read the journal in the 70s, it was nothing but lines and numbers. It was so hard to understand. I mean, it was like, damn. But kept reading it, kept studying it, kept looking at it, and I started figuring it out a little bit. So I told my mom when I was 14, I'm going to work on Wall Street. I bought my first mutual fund when I was 17. She had to co-sign because I was too young. And I bought my first stock when I was 21. At 18, I bought my first stock. After I was in the Air Force, I was in Minot, and I went to the Dean Witter office in Minot, North Dakota. So I've always wanted to be on this path. I've been pretty lucky. It's been a lot of hard work, a lot of ups and downs, but it's got me to this place. And of course, where we are right now overall, I just had to sneak upstairs and watch Jay Powell raise rates 75 basis points. I think everyone understands that the big question is where our economy is going. So to kind of figure that out, what I thought I would do is just kind of talk about how we got here, because so much money was just dumped into our economy. It was like the biggest party ever. But with the biggest party ever, eventually you got to come up with the next part of it, right? Which is, I'm going to get this thing to work, the hangover, right? So here's our hangover right now. I decided I would recast the hangover, though. So we got some pretty new central characters. And I think these are about appropriate right now. Can these folks get us through the hangover? So first of all, let's talk about this plague. This virus came out of nowhere. Well, we know where it came out of, but it came out, caught everyone by surprise. The world shut down, we shut down, businesses shut down. And of course, it came the plague, had to come an avalanche of money to kind of offset the plague. $13.9 trillion in 2020 was authorized. About 10 trillion of it actually went out between the federal government and the Federal Reserve. So let me just start with the Federal Reserve, because I'm not a big fan of the Federal Reserve. I'm not sure if we have any people who believe the Federal Reserve has only been designed to keep the rich rich, the ultra rich rich, and certainly there was a lot of things that were promised. One of the problems we had in this country is we had these massive depressions, particularly in the 1300s, and they were devastating. It's so amazing to me that we were actually, during this period of time, still catching up to Great Britain and would soon overtake them as the #1 economy in the world. Look at these, down 34%, down 37%, down 25%, down 29%. It was just it was just carnage upon carnage upon carnage. And in between all of that, we would find a way to grow crazy, right? Of course, we had the Industrial Revolution. We were connecting the country. It was an exciting time, but the boom busts were absolutely mind-boggling. So they had a meeting down in Jekyll Island, and where Senator Aldrich went down with a few other folks. They said, listen, how can we make sure that this doesn't happen again? And they came up with what they called the Aldrich Plan. And this was the blueprint for the Federal Reserve. And then they got a spokesperson for it. At the time, the governor of New Jersey, a guy named Woodrow Wilson. He was also president of Princeton. And he made a really interesting pitch. He said, all this trouble, going back to those panics, could be averted if we appointed a committee of 6 or 7 public-spirited folks like J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan having been credited with saving the economy twice, single-handedly writing checks or raising money. Then, of course, when we finally got it, we saw that we were promised financial freedom. The Federal Reserve is here, no more boom bust. Okay, well, that really didn't kind of go the way they thought it would, did it? Let me see if we can just, I'm having trouble getting this thing to move ahead. All right, let's go back. Let's take a look first and foremost. So the Fed Act goes into 1913. We get the Federal Reserve, and we're home free. Then we get a recession, right? 1920, 1921. In fact, that was the worst recession going back to the mid-1800s till the Great Depression. It was painful. It was hard. It was harsh. Then, of course, we had the Great Depression. And we've had a few of those ever since. More recently, the Federal Reserve says, okay, then we got to figure out a way to make sure that we can be, more proactive, to make sure this doesn't happen again. So they have their famous toolbox to add these new arrows to the quivers, because just moving rates up and down wasn't enough. So they created this thing called quantitative easing. Consequently, what you're seeing is the Fed balance sheet. It was $900 billion back in August of 2008. Back then, if you'd ask any economist, what's the most the Fed can have on its balance sheet and the world doesn't implode? You might have heard 2 trillion, 3 trillion. I don't think anyone would have said 4.5 trillion, which is where it went by January of 2015. Of course, we got out of the last debacle, and the Fed said, okay, we're going to now start to bring some of this in. We're going to reel it in. And why this is important, folks, is we are now re-embarking on this same journey. Why has the market been haywire? Why have yields gone? Mortgages are over 6%. The bond market is just devastated. I don't know how many people in here have been investing long-term what they call a 60-40 portfolio. It was sort of the ideal mix that was promoted. 60% stocks, 40% bonds. And essentially it worked for about 40 years. It's completely shattered right now. It's completely shattered. In fact, the bond market may go in a secular decline. I'm talking being down 10, 20 years, that kind of a decline. So a lot of folks are scrambling for alternatives. Unfortunately, right now, there's no real alternative that's working. Things like crypto have come down. Some of these other alternatives have come down. Things like gold aren't going up like they were promised to go up. So we started to take some of the money out the system, we being the Federal Reserve. They also started to hike rates. And they nibbled, right? Janet Yellen at the time was in charge of the Federal Reserve. So in December of 2015, she hiked rates just 25 basis points, just a little bitty rate hike. The first 15 days of January, pure hell. The market went straight down. By this time, the market was accustomed to beating up the Fed. The Fed was reacting to the market more than the market reacting to the Fed. Janet Yellen learned her lesson. She didn't mess around with rates again until after the election. And then she hiked them again in late December 2016. Pissed Donald Trump off because he took it personal. He had just won the election, so she thought she was deliberately trying to wreck the economy because he was president. But here's the thing. We took the balance sheet from 4.5 trillion down to 3.7 trillion. The reason that's important is because now they really believe they're going to take trillions of dollars out the system. We couldn't even take 1 trillion out the system before they changed their minds last time. There's no way in the world that this Fed is going to take that much money out the system. Something to really keep in mind. I was watching Powell's conference. It was pretty intriguing. Remember last time, if there were folks who watched it, he actually said he wasn't going to go 75 basis points. He had no choice. A lot of that was predicated, he said, on the Friday on the Michigan sentiment number, which, by the way, if you watch my show, I was pounding the table. I said this number, this Michigan sentiment number, is more important than the inflation number because it tells how we feel. How did we feel? Well, it was the worst number in history. But more importantly, inflation expectations keep going up. They keep going up. I'm not sure how Powell can curb them, but I do know that there's been a lot of lost confidence in Powell. So let's talk about the government's response. All right. Sticking with the hangover theme. So we had the CARES Act, and it certainly did pack a punch. There's no doubt about it, right? I mean, it had to. There was a lot of money, several $1 trillion. Yeah, $1.8 trillion went to households. $1.7 trillion went to business. $745 billion went to state and local. By the way, all of this money was just really like anything else. A lot of it was not for COVID, economic response. It was all a bunch of money sent to states to use later on to buy political favors. And we're starting to see that right now. It's unfortunate, but that's what, never let an opportunity go to waste. They sent trillions and trillions of dollars. And now that, unfortunately, we're paying a serious price for that. Of course, money went everywhere else, like Ron Papelli. But wait, there's more. Okay. You want more? Then you got more. So they saved everything on the planet. Now here's the good news. When we came out of 2020, the economy was strong as hell, using traditional metrics to measure that. This really is really important. Household debt servicing payments as a percentage of disposable income. So, after you get your paycheck, how much you have to put toward your bills. It was the lowest in history. Everything, it was the lowest in history. Now, unfortunately, some of it was because people didn't have a house anymore, but you still didn't have the bill, right? So you didn't have a mortgage, that's good. But no, most of it was because all this money had flooded into the economy. People didn't have to work. It was just an amazing time. So households were sitting pretty stronger than ever. Corporations, forget about it, sitting on well over $3 trillion. So we're this strong. The economy is so strong. And we're on the glide path, right? We've got the vaccine. We're opening up. We're going to get back on track because before that, we were becoming an economic juggernaut. Some of the things that were happening in our economy when the pandemic hit were just mind-boggling. Blue-collar wages were on a pace that an economist said could never happen again. The gap between black and white wages had narrowed to the narrowest point ever in history in this country. So many things were on fire. It was truly the definition of shared prosperity. But some folks were like, you know what? We need a little bit more. How about a bump? So, you like that one, Paul? So in comes the free money crowd. We need a bump. The free money crowd. This is a really massive, major movement in this country. Now, the official name of it is modern monetary theory. I'm not sure how many folks have heard of it, know about it. It's been around for a long time. Essentially, the way it goes is that government prints money. Why doesn't government print unlimited money and give it to people who need it? Let's go a step further. How about we just give people money even if they don't need it? What's wrong with that? So essentially what we were able to do in 2021 as a nation is to go ahead and give it a try. We didn't call it modern monetary theory, but that's exactly what it was. $1.9 trillion, and it went to a whole bunch of stuff, right? But there are two areas that I think really have manifested into the crisis that we're suffering right now. One was paying people not to work. And this is just crazy. In 50 cities and states at this very moment, there are universal basic income programs. They keep trying it. Scandinavian countries try it all the time. And it's always amazing to me, they'll do this like for 2 years, they'll pay people not to work, and then a year later, they'll assess it and say, well, yeah, we paid them. People surprisingly didn't look for a job. I'm like, surprisingly? They spent a lot of time at home eating Fruit Loops and watching TV. Like, yeah, they did, right? Playing video games. Golly, how much are you getting paid to do these? Because it sounds like a pretty good racket. I heard the guys up here discussing, maybe some of the brokers at the lower end of your industry can go do some of these things because it's blowing my mind. It's blowing my mind how much money we have actually spent around the world trying to figure out ways to give people money and ask them not to be productive and somehow think that that's a positive for society. It was so bad in this country, people were making more money to stay at home than they were to go to work. So, in Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, Kansas, Idaho, Iowa, Utah, imagine this, like if you had to weigh this, if you're sitting at home and said, okay, between my regular unemployment and the $300 top off, I usually make $900 a week. This is $800. But I hate my boss. You're gonna stay home, right? Or I hate my job. I'm gonna stay home, right? And people stayed home. And that was the genesis of the work spiral. This wage spiral that we've got going on right now, Because when people stayed home, as the economy opened up, businesses were like, hey, your job is open again. You want to take it? Nah, that's okay. I don't need it. Enough people did this where companies had to raise wages. And now it's feeding on itself. It is a beast. This wage spiral is a beast. It really is, because while it looks great and it sounds great on paper, this year, according to ADP, every single month, small businesses have lost employees. Through April, over 250,000. So if Amazon is paying $25 an hour in dental and pet insurance, I mean, that's a biggie right there, pet insurance. I'm like, Dad, we came a long way, right? When I grew up, the dog was in the back. Every morning you check to see if he was still there. It's like, Rex, Rex. All right, think he moved on. Now we got pet insurance. What the hell is going on? Now, I'm not going to work for Pizza Hut unless I get pet insurance. Okay. So we've got this wage price spiral, and it's out of control. It really is. On top of that, believe it or not, people lied. Yeah, they were giving out all that money and people lied. I love this one. So in August of 2020, you had 216% of unemployment claims versus unemployed people. It's like, what the hell? Hold on. I mean, you know, Chicago perfected this with the voting, but this is a whole different thing, right? Are you serious? I mean, everybody like, yeah, my cousin's out of work. I came down for his check. Okay, we don't seem to have your cousin. You know, the COVID is killing everybody. Okay, all right, here, take it. What's his name again? Yeah, what the... So it's just mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. People were getting paid not to work. People who didn't have a job were getting paid not to work. The genesis of the wage spiral, and I'm telling you, is completely out of control. We have what I call the perma-strike. We still haven't gotten back. The labor force participation is extraordinarily low. It was already going down for a long time for a lot of reasons, but you know, you got to wonder when we're going to get back. The last jobs report, the only group that was back to pre-COVID, pre-pandemic were women, which I found interesting because you know, they had more of the responsibilities of staying at home and childcare and those kind of things. Then, of course, there's the famous STEMI. The STEMIs, I think, were just absolutely amazing. So we have a friend, he works at Gucci, and he called my wife up one night. It was like 10 o'clock at night. He was still at work. He says, TT, they keep coming with the STEMIs. He was wore out. They're buying everything. I mean, even now, you know, the supply shortage. Every time I went to the mall, there was like a line of 20 people deep for Louis Vuitton, Gucci, all of this stuff. I mean, I would go into the store, Neiman. Where I used to buy my ties in Neiman, they got rid of all that. I came in the store one day like, Charlie, yeah, the tie section is that desk over there. All right? It was all like these expensive sneakers, $650, and you get, you know, if you get your STEMI, you could buy 2 pair. And it's just, again, between the unemployment and the STEMIs, and then you have people who says, well, you know, it was only $1,400. That was the basic. That was the basic. Think about this for a moment. So if you were a single person or you had the number of dependents in the family, up to $112,000 in household income, you can get up to $8,400. If you were married, a married household with 5 dependents or 5 folks, $10,000, $9,800. I mean, all of this starts to add up. So you're paying me not to work and I'm getting a STEMI? Are you kidding me? During this period, Bernard Arnault, CEO of Louis Vuitton, became the richest person in the world during this period. It was just mind-boggling. Absolutely mind-boggling. But as time has gone on, even some people who tried to deny that maybe this was a bad idea are slightly coming around. These are just some headlines. One is from Vox, one is from the New York Times. These are, you know, 2 publications that would rarely ever say anything negative about the Biden administration. Biden's American Rescue Plan worsens inflation. The question is, how much? As Biden pleads for more COVID aid, states are awash in federal dollars. Now, there's an academic argument out there that says, well, when people got that money, they used it to pay off debt. This is from the Peterson Foundation. So it's in the first round of cash, people use 11% to pay off debt. The next round, 54%. The next round, 49%. So that really isn't money. That money didn't go into the economy. It just paid off old debts. It sounds good on paper, but in real life, I can't find it. I'm looking at auto loans, which have gone up, you know, and again, these loans are so high. I don't know if anyone's bought a new car in the last year, but if you did you have to pay over sticker, right? I mean, I'm embarrassed to tell you how much over sticker I had to buy. My wife wanted this G-Wagon. She got me good, all right? Because we had a Navigator, and something, I don't know what the hell happened, but it was in the shop like 5 times in a year, and the company finally said, okay, it's a limit, we'll take it back. So she's like, listen, you know, I need that G-Wagon thing you promised me. I was like, oh, shit. The book's doing good. Yeah, I know. All right, go ahead. So I'm at work. She always gets me during the market hours, especially on them down days. Dow down 500, let me call them now. Yeah, you know that thing? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, shit. I get home all of a sudden, what the hell? We got a lion? So I get the call. I'm at the place with the G-Wagon. Oh, yeah. So yeah, how much is it? And she told me the number. I was like, damn, that's just a fancy Jeep. It was crazy. I can't fit in it. Then I was trying to get in that bad boy. I was going backwards. What the hell? I leaned in it for a minute. So I was like, all right, go ahead. I forgot the number. It was something like 180 grand. So she calls me from the dealer. All right, so I'm going to get it, but it's only one of 2,000, and there's a premium. Oh, so how much more? 50,000 more. What the? Are you crazy? Oh, shit. I'm sweating. The market's down. She's like, yeah, but you got that pickup truck. All right, go ahead. I get another phone call. The maintenance plan. For what? For this kind of money, it should maintain itself, right? I'm like, what? I want to watch the Jeep change its own tires. Anyway, it's embarrassing. That thing costs so much damn money. So auto loans, I'm like, okay, listen, nobody has cars on the lot. Now, some of that's supply chain issue, but also the demand is through the roof. Consumer loans, same thing, right? We got consumer loans. So same thing. They've gone up. I don't see where there's been any sort of degradation in consumer loans. And then credit card loans, there was a dip there, of course. Credit card loans have come down. But they've erupted. They're going back up. In fact, congratulations, because we just reestablished the new all-time high for credit card debt. We're back at the all-time high. Now, the good news is as a percentage of GDP, we're still a long ways away from the old record. But nominally, we're at the old record. And of course, all of this gets us back to recession or higher prices or inflation. Now, this morning, this is part of the retail sales report, but this morning the next retail sales report came out. This is for April. And the most important thing to know, obviously, is that the food and gasoline have just gone crazy. This morning, the retail sales report was out. It was down 0.3%. The street thought it was going to be up 0.2%. So everything that came out this morning was a major miss, everything. The National Association of Home Builders down for the 6th month in a row. Every single economic data point out was a miss. So we know inflation is erupting. Last read was 8.6%. The bottom chart is the one I mentioned earlier, the Consumer Sentiment Report, all-time low. I was doing a show. I was with, I guess, I don't know, maybe I was with Brett Baer or someone, and I mentioned that. I said, so what does that mean? We feel like crap. I was like, what does it mean? It's the lowest in 85 years. What do you think it means? It's like when you go to the emergency room, like, okay, you okay? No, I'm in the emergency room, and can someone help me? So with this inflation thing, what are we really concerned about? There's a couple of things. Inflation psychology, right? This gets back to sentiment or expectation, inflation expectation, but also the last real major inflationary period that we had went from 1965 to 1982. That was also the period of stagflation. Just an absolute miserable time, an absolute miserable time. And we want to make sure that we don't get into that. Now, already we're seeing where families are making adjustments. This was one survey I saw a week ago, and it kind of blew my mind. So changing the type of food they bought, 65%. Changing the brands of food, 64%. Using food banks, 45%. A parent skipped a meal, or parents skipping a meal so children can eat, 45%. And then the entire family skipping a meal, 9%. I did see another survey, I didn't put it in here, very similar, and it was showing how millennials are suffering. And it showed them like from 100,000, 150,000, 250,000, and like 500,000, right? And how many of them saying they were living paycheck to paycheck? It was an astonishing number, like 60%, 65%. But I did find a tweet that explained it. This guy said, hey, I'm a millennial, and I'm really having trouble making ends meet. This is my monthly budget. So it was 5,000 for avocado toast, 10,000 for Uber Eats, and the big line item was 20,000 for OnlyFans. So I'm having real trouble with the budget, you know. My parents had it so much better than I did. I hate this country. Inflation, demand destruction is happening, gasoline, but of course if you gotta go to work, you gotta go to work. So many people have been, you know, listen, we're gonna go hit the road. We've been locked up for 2 years. And, you know, so, you know, we're not getting the traditional demand destruction that we normally would get, but we are in serious trouble, right? The electric cars ain't ready yet. Someone needs to tell somebody. Honestly, this is what we need to do. And we've seen now where this Defense Production Act was used by President Trump to expedite the vaccine production. And essentially, it was a brilliant idea. Essentially, for those who aren't really familiar, like the typical drug, you have the drug, you know, you come up with the idea for the drug, and then you have the 3 phases, phase 1, 2, 3. Phase 1 is essentially, will it kill you, right? 2, 3. Then you go for new drug application. They actually did them all simultaneously, which had never been done before. So you cut down a 3 to 5 year process, and that's how we had it so fast. Now we're using the Defense Production Act for baby formula. Not to make it, just to fly it over here, and some other things, right? Why don't we, this is what I wish we would do it for refineries. That's what's killing us. That's what's killing your industry, right, with the fuel costs, right? I mean, it's not killing it, but it's hurting it, right? And that's what's hurting America. We don't have refineries. The last major refinery was built in this country in 1977. 1977. If we build 2 or 3 refineries using the Defense Production Act, we could expedite it, get all the permits and approvals done immediately. It would take 2 to 3 years, and they would last 20 years. And if you look at the demand for oil and where we are now, take a look at this. This is around the world. We're just not, it's just not even feasible that somehow we're going to have, you know, an alternative to fossil fuels tomorrow. I always said if everyone in this room, if everyone in this country woke up with an EV tomorrow in your garage, 99% of us would have to work from home. There's no infrastructure for it. It's just crazy. It's nuts. What this administration should do, I know they won't, but what they should do is say, we're going to actually blow you away. We're going to use the Defense Act. We're going to build 2 or 3 refineries. We're going to speed up the production of it. We'll make sure that oil prices stay low. We're going to drill the oil we have. We're going to refine it here, and prices will be so low it won't harm American families as we make the transition to the green utopia. Yeah, I did say that with a little bit of sarcasm. I don't know about the green utopia, but. So meanwhile, I don't need to tell anyone here, recession taking some serious tolls here. The thing that it's hit the most is recreation. Anybody know anything about the recreation industry in this room? So I happen to believe that, that we're not going into a recession. Here's some estimates out there. This is from Morgan Stanley. It's still a mixed bag on Wall Street. Again, though, this is Wall Street that I can't believe how bad the street has been. On my show alone this week, every one of my experts said the Fed wasn't going to go 75 basis points. It just blew me away. Sometimes I don't think they have any middle class or poor people in their family. I would ask, I said, Pete, do you know anybody who's poor? Like, do you talk to your limo driver? Like, I mean, what world are you living in? So Morgan Stanley says no. Deutsche Bank says yes, but it will be shallow. The yield curve went negative, inverted rather, this week, which is another sign of an impending recession. And this might be the biggest one. This is called the stripper index. So yeah, this is reverse cowgirl. She put out this tweet. She said, the strip club is sadly a leading indicator, and I can promise y'all, we are in a recession. So that was back in May. So if reverse cowgirl says it, I'm like, listen, forget it, pal. That's my main source right there. She's on the front lines. So I also had a great conversation with Paul and some others, and we're talking about the private equity industry, private equity entering the industry. So I did some research, and I could see it's been happening now for a few years. You know, all aspects of it. But here's the thing, you're not alone. They're buying up mobile homes. Folks, if they're going after double wides, they're coming after the yachts. I'm sorry. I mean, if they're going after the cost of a double wide has gone from $85,000 to $123,000 just in less than a year. Rents have been doubling. The private equity industry, in 2010, there was 0 institutional ownership. Now there are over 30 institutions that own mobile homes. And you would think, golly, what the hell? Are you serious? You know, and nothing can stop. They just have so much money and such an insatiable appetite. And they go after fragmented industries with very little political power. And, you know, I wish something could stop them. I really do. I do think that they've taken it too far. What they've done with single-family homes in this country, you know, if you want to buy a starter house, good luck. You can't. I mean, they buy them unseen. They're buying all the rental companies. They got a taste of it after the global financial crisis. A few of them bought a few of these, and it was great, right? But this time around, forget about it. So I know it's a tough one. I don't have any words of encouragement because, again, if they're going after the double wides, they're going to come after your business too. All right, finally, I wanted to end on this because people say I'm a rose-colored glasses kind of guy, and I feel like I'm this dog in this poster, right? 3 legs, blind in 1 eye, missing a right ear, tail broken, recently castrated, answers to the name, Lucky. So I think we're going to be okay. I really do. And I think some of the pain that we've suffered, people will remember. Some of these experiments that we've tried, people are going to remember. I actually believe we're positioned almost perfectly to have a redo of the 1920s, the Roaring '20s. The Roaring '20s began with the Spanish flu, 2-year pandemic. End of a war, sort of like the end of the war on terror. A president who loved high taxes. Taxes had only started like in 1912 or something like that. The first rate was 75%. Wilson took them at 75%. And then all of a sudden, first we get Harding. Harding was, listen, he liked to party a little bit, all right? But he just party a little bit, you know what I mean? He'd been great for social media these days, though. I mean, golly. That dude, Bob Ford in Canada, didn't have nothing on Harding, all right? But Harding was pro-business. As soon as he got into office, he started lowering taxes. But of course, he died suddenly, and then they brought in his successor. And I got to tell you, it was amazing. It was an amazing time. No decade did life expectancy improve better than that. No decade did things like the automobile, which only for the rich became part of the masses. So I think we're set up for it, but we have to have the right backdrop, the right policies. And maybe that begins in the midterm elections. But right now, we've learned that free money doesn't work. We learned paying people to stay home doesn't work. And I think we also learned that let us out, let us have freedom. Of course, I'm talking to the right people in the right state about this, but maybe the rest of the country is learning, that we're fighters, that we do believe in pulling ourselves up by the bootstraps. That's how we got here. That's how we became the preeminent nation in the world. Despite all of those panics, every other 4 years apart, we overtook Great Britain and we haven't looked back. And it's not time to look back right now. We can still be the #1 country in the world with prosperity opportunities for everybody out there. And that's what I truly believe. Thank you.
So we got 200 people in this room, and we have a unique opportunity to ask a man who really has his finger on the pulse, obviously, as to what's going on. Who's got a question that they'd like to ask Charles? Mike.
When somebody says to you that the president doesn't control the price of gas or has no influence on the price of gas, what would your response to that be?
Well, I predicted all of this before the election. I would say, first and foremost, pull up a chart of gasoline and crude oil. And the day after the election, it went up, and it went up, and it went up, and it went up, and it went up. All right, listen, President Biden promised the war on crude oil. He promised it. It was part of his campaign. And every industry takes its cue from the president. He started to enact certain rules on the first day, certain things he did on the very first day in office. They went to court on things like offshore drilling. They started to limit land. So the president right now could play a vital role by calling a truce on the war on fossil fuels, because it's also influenced the ESG movement, which is really, really tough. I'm telling you, this ESG movement is another one of these things that you knew it was going to be devastating in so many ways. Environmental, social governance. And essentially, it's politically correct. It's, I think it's part appeasement, part assuaging the guilt of the wealthiest of the wealthy. It's even more pervasive in Europe. So you can't even raise money for a major project because the folks who control the big money are now operating under these ESG rules. But there's no real format for it, right? There's no uniform standard. Europe would probably have one by the end of the year. We don't have one. So when someone like Elon Musk says, I'm going to buy Twitter, and he surprises all of his progressive friends because he sounds less progressive, they actually take him out of the S&P ESG index, right? The guy's selling electric cars. Maybe they should be in it. So the politicalization of it is important. So without demonizing, because what you're going to see, over the weekend, President Biden said ExxonMobil is making more money than God. What he didn't say was in 2020, ExxonMobil lost $22 billion. What he didn't say is in 2019 and 2020, they borrowed $30 billion so they can do production. What he didn't say is that this is an extremely volatile business. The last time crude oil spiked in 2008 at 140 some odd dollars a barrel, a year later it was $38 a barrel. But they're going to try to go after them now, what they call windfall profit taxes. All of that eventually, though, comes to the consumer. So the president is the central figure. If he would say, time out, truce, we're going to build refineries, we should take care, it's a blessing to have this crude in our country under our feet and the technology to get to it. It takes kids to school. It takes parents to work. When I go and beg the Saudi Arabian prince that I called a pariah not long ago, crude oil will pick up Air Force One and fly me over there. So just maybe we could call a truce because it is destroying the average American family. It is destroying them over this climate change agenda. Whether you believe in it or not, it will take time to get to wherever they want us to go. Why should the average American suffer needlessly because of it?
Fantastic message, really. I mean, it's just phenomenal to hear your vantage point on it. And from your vantage point, do you think there's a prayer that the two sides, I mean, it's the most polarizing time in the history of politics. Do you think there's any prayer that in our lifetime that the two sides can get together with a more moderate approach?
That's a great question. Every time I think of that, I go back to some of these history books and where they've said it actually was worse than this. It's hard to believe, right? But it's, I believe it could because I really believe that most Americans share the same values and the same goals and the same dreams, and we all kind of want the same thing. But we don't have big purchase, these big platforms to express certain outrage. But the outrage machine, though, it's not just about outrage or ideology. It's power. It's money. And if it goes away, you've got a lot of the most powerful, influential entities in this country. We technically wouldn't need them anymore. They only survive if we're in turmoil with each other. You know, I remember the day after Barack Obama was elected, I got an email from the NAACP and essentially said, it's worse than ever. What? Oh, what? It's like, it was counterintuitive, right? Like, it is? Like, get ready. It's going to be worse than ever. Listen, my family owned a farm in Alabama, right? My grandparents, you know, it wasn't going to get worse than ever. But I believe if somehow, and it might be through the internet, you know, through the ability to craft messages, that was one of the panels today, bypassing the power centers. Maybe there could be some sort of a middle uprising, but it's always a headless, you know, there's no figurehead, there's no leader, and it's always, every single day, the powers that be make sure that they keep us at odds. You know, one of the panelists said he likes to be in front of people every single day on social media. Well, that's how the messaging, the messaging never stops. No matter what the topic is, it immediately becomes political. It immediately becomes finger pointing. I pray we could get there. I won't give up hope that we can, because I believe most people, the overwhelming majority of Americans, want the same thing, and I think we could get there together.
Great perspectives today. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
What's your pros and cons on the federal government bailing out federal student loans?
I hate it. I just can't even, I can't even believe it that they even have brought this up, you know. And so the average, with a bachelor's degree, someone with a bachelor's degree will earn on average more than $1 million in their lifetime than someone with a high school diploma. They'll earn up to $2 million more than someone who dropped out of high school. They will live 8 years longer than someone who went to high school, who only went to high school. About 13 to 16 years longer than someone who dropped out of. Their children will be like 99% less likely to ever be involved in any kind of violence as a victim. They are the epitome of the American dream. They're on the path to the American dream. A lot of this money is held by advanced degrees, PhDs. This is the most elitist plan I've ever heard in my life. It boggles the mind that someone driving a taxi, that their tax money should go to pay for some PhD. But it's not the first one. They're giving them a lot of money for solar panels and solar cars, these electric vehicles. The child tax credit hijacked the image of poor black children to pay off educated, elite, progressive white people. The money to qualify for that child tax credit, $300,000, $400,000. Did they really need, did someone making $300,000 really need money to take care of their children, really? But when you heard the president talk about it, they talked about the families they lifted out of poverty. And that's another scam. What's poverty? Well, according to the government, a family of four, I think it's $26,400. That's your poverty line. So for some period of time, if your income is, or your, not income, whatever your net money into your household, let's say it's $27,000. They've lifted you out of poverty. Congratulations, have a great life. 27 grand, we did it. We told you we'd do it. In the meantime, across town, the household making $300,000 got more money than you. Now, according to the most recent survey that I've seen, families that earn $100,000 or more who got the child tax credit, they bank 54% of it. Wall Street is fond of saying that right now there's an excess of $2.5 trillion in savings. I don't know what the hell it is, but I tell you what, if it's true, the people who have it are the people who got the child tax credit, who got taxpayer money for solar vehicles, and now we're going to pay their student loan off. You talk about classism, elitism, and how do they pull it off? Look how much money ExxonMobil is making. Hurry up, take the money, take it. While nobody's looking. That's how they pull it off. And everybody's looking over. Yeah, damn, they're making all that money. Oh, what happened? Where'd that go? We were helping the poor people. So I hate the idea. I really think it's just, it's the kind of thing that separates our country, you know. It's demoralizing, and it's dumb. What do you do next year? On average, about 100 million, you know, you're going to have $100 million in college loans. What do you do next year? I'm hearing from colleges. I had the guy who drove me here last night. His girlfriend's from Cuba. She wants to go to, I think it's a dental school. And it's $60,000, it's going to be $30,000 a year. They get $60,000 some odd dollars. But the school told her they need the money up front because they're afraid that they may start doing these loan forgiveness things and they won't ever get paid. There are these consequences. What about people who already paid off their loans, who worked their you know what off? What's the message to people out there? Take a loan, don't pay it back, because somehow you think that, you know, your life is so tough that you didn't buy a house at the same time your mom did. Your mom and dad had a house when they were 28, and now you're 30, and somehow society owes that to you. It's devastating. I'm telling you, this is, I know they're going to do it, but it's obvious that they don't know how to sell it yet. They've tried every angle. They've tried every angle. They would have done it already, but they have to stop. There's been a massive wealth redistribution to the richest people and the most blessed people in our country, and it's just anti-American. Yes. Thank you.
I was just wondering if you had any tips for everybody in the room vis-a-vis their retirement accounts that they all see plummeting right now.
You know, one thing, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, I am worried about this whole 60-40 portfolio thing. I really am concerned about the bond market. It enjoyed a 4-decade rally. And I know that when you see a financial advisor, they typically say you take your age, you minus it from 100. You know, this tells you how much you should have in stocks and bonds. And, you know, if the bond market does not recover, and this is really where we're going with it, you got to find an alternative. I think you definitely have to be in good stocks, Peloton notwithstanding. And you know, don't get shaken out. You know, it's so crazy to get shaken out during these periods of time. But I do think you got to find some alternatives. What's big right now is looking for high-paid dividend companies that are, you know, stocks that are paying pretty strong dividends. They have a list, they call it the aristocrats. And these are companies that have raised their dividend every year for at least 25 years. That's a good place to start. Although some of it's like, to stay on the list, they'll raise their dividend by a penny. Right? So technically they did raise their dividend. But stay the course. I would dabble in some other things. Now, I know we have at least one crypto fan here, one Bitcoin fan. I bought a little bit of Bitcoin. I have 1.1 Bitcoin. So I have some gold that I've had for a long time. I just go home and look at it like, what's up, my man? What you gonna do? It's just standing there looking dumb. I don't know. I was like, yo, they said you were gonna do something when inflation kicked in. I said, yeah, I know, but I've been laying here so long, I don't know what to do. So, all right, I'll put you back in the closet. It's like, so they say have some gold, who knows? But I definitely say stay the course with these quality names that are getting hammered right now. The market obviously always gets ahead of itself from time to time, and then when it gets sold off, it gets sold off too much. And you know, it's really amazing to me, the first, you know, almost everybody knows that over time, we'll go back to a new high. Right? And that you should buy great names, hold on to them. You make some adjustments in your portfolio. That's what my book is about. But, you know, I have all these experts, and they, you know, as soon as they're all bullish. Yeah, hey, I'm bullish. And then we get a little bump in the road. And I sold everything, Charlie. What the hell? What kind of, it's like, so I can see why everyone else is confused, because the experts always panic every time there's a hiccup. So the biggest tip is stay the course. And always commit yourself to learning a little bit more about what you're doing. I consider myself a student in the market. I'm learning every single day. And I think that's the biggest mistake. People will buy one stock, two stocks, see how it goes. It's not for me. Or when it gets hit, they may sell at the low or decide I'll never buy again. Either way, it's a huge mistake. Stay committed. It's got to be a lifelong endeavor.
We've got time for one more question from the audience. Oh, right back here.
Yeah, so I'm curious, what makes you lean towards there not being a recession with certain indicators like, lower GDP numbers, yield curve inversion, and all that? So if I heard you correctly, it seems like you're leaning a little bit towards no recession.
Well, I think that if there is, it won't be a 2008 kind of recession, Like, let's look at the housing market, for instance, versus 2008, when they had a gazillion subprime loans. They repackaged them as AAA credit, AAA bonds, and, the world was essentially sitting on a time bomb. If you look at the housing market the last couple of years, you had a tough time with a low FICO score getting anything. So I'm not worried about an implosion in the housing market, which is the #1 source of the wealth effect. The nation, even though rates are going up, they're still low. I just mentioned how this bond rally has gone on for 40 years. So even at 4% is still relatively low. I do think corporations are sitting on a fair amount of cash right now. So if we do, I tend to lean with the Deutsche Bank chart, that if there is some sort of a recession, I think it will be shallow. But I don't think we're going to have, that sort of recession that many people remember, because a lot of folks in this room probably remember what happened after the crash in 2000, 2001. And of course, everybody remembers the global financial crisis. But I think the genesis, the roots of those things were so much more, so much more devastating. And those are not in place right now. So listen, we got 11 million job openings, right? People have gotten raises, and when things settle down and prices come down, they'll still have that raise, right? So even though ever since that American Rescue Plan went into effect, every single month, real wages have been negative because of inflation. At some point, that will also change. So I think it would be relatively shallow. There's some things, obviously, that wild cards out there. One is, how the Fed reacts to it. I think the war in Russia, the invasion of Ukraine, no one's talking about it that much anymore. It really feels like Russia's got some pretty strong momentum there. Maybe it leads to some sort of ceasefire. If that happens, I think you'll see crude oil come down a minimum of 10, maybe 20%, almost automatically. So there's some things that could sort of mitigate the pain that we're in right now. So I would say either no recession or a shallow recession. Just my thought.
Charles, everybody knows me to be the honest guy in the room, but I lied. I got one more question.
Wanted to thank you very much for talking today. Some of it was pretty heavy, but it was good to hear. And your story about your wife getting a G-Wagon, 50 grand over sticker. So my question to you today is, which one of us is going to sell you a yacht? Because that's what we're here for today.
I guess
that was not a plant. That was not a plant. I'm telling you.
I guess today I come home from work and I turn the corner and there's a yacht in my yard. And you've already sold it to the wife. I already told you the secret. It ain't me.
I'll be getting your cell phone number later on.
All you got to do is say, yeah, Charlie said he wanted the yacht. He did? And she'll be like, well, send me the picture. Yeah? All right.
What's her favorite color?
I don't really have a favorite color.
Good.
Yeah.
Whatever's in inventory.
Yeah. Just tell me I'm getting a discount. I'm old school New York.
Charles?
I'm old school New York. I got to believe I'm getting a discount. Even if I'm not. You're like, just lie to me. Yeah, we're getting you this 30% off. Okay. All right.
So I got to be honest. It was interesting, some of the slides that you put up there, because there was consideration about have Mike Tyson come and talk to us today. But I'm really glad we had you. Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. I think we need to send Charles out with the same warm welcome that we brought him in.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks a lot.